Well, I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see this, but it's 2 in the morning on October 31st, 2019, Halloween, and I'm standing by my loaded canoe, getting ready to paddle out into the Upper St. Johns River marsh. I figured what could be more spooky and in the Halloween spirit than going canoeing in the middle of a alligator and snake-infested swamp in Florida in the middle of the night. So why don't you come along with me? We'll see what we find. I'm going to tell you a ghost story too while we're out here. It's not a ghost story, it's a story that actually happened to me, and it's somewhat unbelievable, but you be the judge. Man, I can't see anything out here. It is pitch black. It is really something. I don't know if swing this around, show you the jungle there, but you probably can't even see it. There's pretty thick jungle to my left. And on my right, there's a man-made levee, but it's so heavily overgrown that it's like a jungle too. And I had the canoe camouflaged up, so we'll just see what we see here in the darkness. Maybe spotlight some alligators, but I forgot to bring my big, powerful lamp, so these small flashlights and headlamp that I have don't do very good, but if they're close enough to the canoe, we'll see them. And there's some out here they call old tail light, because his eyes are so big they glow red, and they're so big in the reflection of the light they look like car tail lights. Alright, let me get straightened out here, and I'm going to tell you guys a story. So this may seem like a kind of crazy and spooky thing, but I figure the swamp is about as dangerous at night as it is in the daytime. It's just that you can't see things. But I'm a guy who's not afraid of the dark. I have no fear of the dark. I don't even feel uncomfortable in the dark. I'm as happy to be out here at 2 a.m. as I am at 2 in the afternoon. And I have a story about that and why that is. I was always a little nervous in the dark when I was in high school, growing up, going camping. I'd hear some stick snap out in the darkness outside my tent, and like anyone else, I would be a little apprehensive, wonder what it was. I wasn't afraid of the dark, but you know, your senses are a little more heightened at night. And then in 1984, the year I graduated high school, I joined the Marine Corps. And as soon as I graduated, I went off to boot camp and served in the Marine Corps Infantry from 1984 to 1988. And in 1985, I'd only been in a year, I was still a boot. I got deployed on my first Westpac float, which is a 6-month deployment on ship. And we went to a number of countries, went to the Philippines 3 times, went to Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong. One of the countries we went to was Thailand, and we were there for like 20 days. And half of that, the first 10 days, was an operation out in the field called Cobra Gold. Now, Cobra Gold is a big exercise out in the jungle, and you do all sorts of stuff in a very remote area. You're training with Thai Marines. It was pretty exciting for a young 19-year-old Marine to be doing this. And like our second day out there in the field, we're sitting there with some Thai Marines, and none of them spoke English except one guy, and we were talking with him a little bit. And just before he left, he said, "Stay up on ridgeline. Be careful lowland. Be careful of the tiger." And he walks off. And I'm like, did he just say be careful of the tiger? And a couple other Marines are like, yeah, I think that's what he said. I think he said be careful of the tiger. I'm like, hold on, there's tigers out here? And our gunnery sergeant's like, yeah, listen, coon dog. They called me coon dog. He goes, you know, we're in Thailand. It's one of the biggest jungles in the world. There's tigers out here. Just keep your wits about you. And I'm going to check with Lieutenant, but I think we'll be all right. I'm going to keep my wits about me. I keep my M16 about me. Tigers? So everyone's a little freaked out about this. Well, we're sleeping out in the field every night in our little, well, we had shelter halves, but it was such good weather, pretty much every night we just slept out under the stars. And about the 4th night out there, about halfway into the operation, I get guard duty. And we're in this area, we'd actually been there 2 days, and it's, there's like 4 posts, but the 4th post we called the coyote post, which is kind of weird in retrospect because there's no coyotes in Thailand, I don't think. But we called it the coyote post because it was so far away. And the whole thing about getting this post was that you had to walk out in the middle of nowhere to get to it, and you had to walk through the jungle for like 15 minutes, which it sucked to walk to any post, but especially after hearing about the tigers, this really sucked. So you had 3 guard shifts through the night. Each was 6 hours. The problem is the first one didn't start till like 8 in the evening when everyone was starting to turn in. So he stood till midnight. So he only got like 4 of the 6 hours. The middle shift stood for from midnight to 6 a.m. So that century had to do the whole 6 hours. And then at 6 a.m. you were relieved and everyone was pretty much getting ready to move camp and everything by about 9 or 10 in the morning. So that guy stood only 3 or 4 hours. But I draw, this like 4th night or 5th night, I draw the middle of the night watch. So I'm like, great. Then I draw the coyote post and I'm like, oh, this is just great. I'm tiger bait. So I go out there at midnight and you have to, the sentry who you're relieving will tell you any pertinent information that he saw or anything strange that happened. So I get out there and this guy named Davenport's there and he says, hey, listen, coon dog man. He goes, I'm not messing with you before I tell you this. I just want you to know about it because it kind of freaked me out. But about an hour ago, something was moving through the brush right here, just outside of the light, and it was big. And we're not in any type, we have a little guard shack. It looks like a plywood phone booth. It has no door on it. You just stand there like some guard at Buckingham Palace. It's just a place to get out of the rain. Then you got this kerosene lamp hanging from a pole. It's like a lamp post out in the middle of the jungle, illuminating about a 10 square foot circumference area of light. And he goes, man, it was right there. It was right outside the light, and it was big. And I listened to him, and I go, oh, bullshit. And he's like, no, I know you were going to say that. I'm telling you, man, it had to be a tiger. And I'm like, it was a deer or something. He's like, no, it was way bigger than a deer. I threw some rocks in there, I heard it run off, and it was making a lot of noise as it crushed through the brush. It wasn't a person. I'm like, all right, man, you got me freaked out now. So he leaves. And I stand my post for like 3 hours. It's uneventful. And here's where it gets weird. At about 3 in the morning, I hear something crushing around in the brush, right where Davenport had. And I'm like, oh, come on, this has got to be someone messing with me. I even said something. I was like, oh, there's a tiger in the bushes. I'd better throw a rock at it and scare it off, thinking that if it was some other Marine messing with me, this would spook him out. But the thing just keeps making noise. And then suddenly, I hear it right on the edge of the light. I mean, it's crushing, it's coming my way. And I'm like, I just kind of froze up. I've never been frozen with fear. But I just didn't know what to do. And at that very moment, into the light, 9 or 10 feet away from me, steps a giant tiger. Now, it gets even stranger. Not only was it a giant tiger 10 feet from me, but it's holding in its mouth a dead, bloody monkey. And I don't mean like some little rhesus monkey. I mean, this thing was like the size of a 12-year-old. It was a big, like, baboon-looking monkey. And he's perpendicular to me. I'm looking at him broadside, and then he perceives me, and he turns his head, and he looks right at me. We're looking eye to eye. And as he turns his head and looks at me, the monkey's head, it's got like a broken neck. Tiger's holding it right about the shoulders. The head's hanging down with blood and gore all over it, and the monkey's eyes are open, looking right at me with its tongue hanging out. So just picture my feelings. Tiger staring at me 10 feet away, middle of the jungle, no one around, dead monkey bleeding, staring at me. I was actually frozen with fear. I couldn't do anything. I had an M16 rifle. I even had back then we carried the Springfield 1911 45 caliber pistol, and about 2 years later we switched to the Beretta 9mm. But I had a big bore 45 caliber pistol in a shoulder holster, and I had a M16A1 pistol, which M16A1 rifle, which back then was full auto. So now they go to burst, but back then it was safety, semi, or machine gun. But it was on my shoulder on the sling, and I just stood there. I just stood there staring at the tiger. And the tiger didn't move, and I didn't move. We just looked at each other for what seemed like a minute. It was probably 5 seconds, but it seemed like forever. Suddenly, the tiger drops the monkey right there in the leaves, looks at me, and goes, I kid you not, it goes, and like just got this growl, hunched down like it was going to spring, like a house cat, just, like a 900-pound house cat. And at that very moment, every fiber in my body came alive. I felt sweat actually burst out everywhere. From my ankles to my head, I felt sweat coming out of my skin. I ripped the rifle off of my shoulder, raised it, slammed a magazine from the pouch in, because I didn't have it loaded, slammed a magazine into the magazine well, drew back the charging handle, slammed it forward, took my thumb and went right safety semi full auto and pointed the front sight post right on that tiger's forehead. And the tiger didn't lunge. He just sat there looking at me. And this seemed like it lasted a while, but he was kind of like not swaying back and forth, but he'd take like one step left, one step right. He couldn't figure out what to do. Then after a few minutes, a few seconds probably, seemed like a few minutes, he reaches down, picks up the monkey, and slowly walks away into the darkness. All right, I had to straighten out the canoe there. So anyway, the tiger walks back into the jungle, and I hear him crushing through the brush, getting further and further away from me, pretty much in a straight line. And at this point, I just pretty much come apart. I mean, I'm just breathing heavy. I feel faint. I was pretty stoic through the whole thing, but I'm soaked now in sweat. I'm trembling, and I don't really know what to do. So I pick up the walkie-talkie. I hesitate, and I call the guard shack, which is just like a mile away. And I'm like, yeah, post 9. It takes like a minute or two, and the guy's like half asleep. The corporal of the guard comes on. He's like, yeah, go ahead, coon dog. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say, so I go, I just saw a tiger. And there's like a 30-second pause. And he comes back on and says, say again? And I said, I just saw a tiger. There's another pause, and he comes back over the radio, and I kid you not, he goes, oh, bullshit. I'm like, okay, I'm reporting anything unusual as we're meant to do. I just saw a tiger. You might want to send someone out here. I'd appreciate it if you did. So he's like, stand by, and he doesn't even call me back. But like, I don't know, like probably 2 minutes later, I see this Jeep, and they actually like loaded up in a Jeep. And the sergeant of the guard is like in shorts and his t-shirt. He'd been asleep. And the corporal of the guard who's on duty is just like in a soft cover with no weapon and a cartridge belt. And they come zooming up in an M151 Jeep, jump out. They're looking around. They're like, where's the tiger? I'm like, oh, he's laying down right about, he's gone now. I wouldn't have called you if the thing had been crawling all over me, but I just saw a tiger. And they're like, coon dog, were you sleeping? I'm like, I wasn't sleeping. I haven't been drinking. I saw a tiger. I'm absolutely sure. It was 10 feet away from me. It stood there and watched me for like 5 minutes. I thought I was going to be killed. It was a tiger. It wasn't a bobcat. It wasn't a deer or a log or a shadow. It was a giant tiger like you would see in a zoo, only there were no bars in front of me and him. And they're like, huh, okay, we're going to have to write this up. Now, at this point, I'm going to be relieved in like maybe an hour and a half. And they stay there with me for about half an hour. Then the last hour, I have to stand there by myself, and I spent that hour in no enviable mood, I can assure you. But nothing else happened. Well, the sentry who comes to relieve me is this guy, I forget his name, but they hadn't told him about it. I guess they didn't want to freak him out. So he comes up all, hey, bud, how's it going? Bud, you can go back now. And I'm like, yeah, did they talk to you down at the guard shack? He's, no, I can go to the guard shack. I just came out. I'm like, okay, it's 6 in the morning, so it's probably 30 minutes to 45 minutes before the sun comes up. And I said, listen, whatever his name was, I said, I saw a tiger tonight, and it was right here. I mean, it came right into the circle of light here. I would load your rifle, and I would be ready at all times to be attacked by a tiger. And he looks at me for a few seconds, and I kid you not, he goes, oh, bullshit. I'm like, okay, well, I report it, pass on to the sentry who relieves you all orders from the commanding officer. Anything unusual, I reported it, you're on your own. I didn't really like the guy that much, so I'm like, if he gets eaten by a tiger, so be it, Semper Fi. So I go back, and I actually fell asleep because I was so exhausted from the experience. Well, at about, what seemed like 5 minutes later, but I think I actually got like an hour's sleep, they wake me up. Now the camp's like 7 in the morning, everyone's starting to get up. And they're like, Coon, they want you at the guard shack. I'm like, yeah. So I go down to the guard shack, and the officer of the day, the lieutenant's there. This guy was a tough, hard guy, smart guy. He'd been to Annapolis Naval Academy and stuff. He was our platoon commander. He was our officer. I was just a lance corporal. And he's like, okay, tell me everything that happened. You have to make an entry in the logbook, which we did, but you didn't have to do it till the next day. And if there was nothing significant that happened, you get away with not doing it for a few days. But you were meant to do it right when you came back off shift, but I didn't. So he's like, I want you to put the entry in the logbook, and I want you to tell me before you do that exactly what happened. So I tell the lieutenant everything. He sits there very professionally listening to me. And when I'm finished, he looks at me and goes, "Oh, bullshit." I'm just like, okay, all right, fine. Someone's going to get eaten by a tiger. Have you checked on so-and-so? He's probably dead right now. But that's fine. That's fine. I saw a tiger. And I wasn't acting indignant, but they could tell that I had told this story enough now, and I was sick and tired of telling it, and I was sure of what I saw. I wasn't going to change my story. And the guys knew. I mean, I could see in their faces. They were like, man, he's a little weird, but he's never been a liar. The guy seems like, well, it'd be strange that he would just, out of the blue, make up something so ridiculous. So the lieutenant gets on, back then we used the old PRC 77 radio, which had like a handheld thing, and there was a big, he had a radio man there and everything. So he takes the radio and he calls, I think it was Brubaker 1, which was our call sign, and Brubaker 1 was the battalion commander. That was like the colonel. So I'm like, oh man, this is going up the pipe. So he gets on there and they come back and tell us some like corporal on the radio, his radio man, but he's like, Brubaker 1, go ahead. And he's like, he explains the situation very briefly, and the radio man's like, stand by. The colonel gets on. Now I recognize this Colonel Davis, this is his voice. And he asks again, the lieutenant explains to him again, one of the sentries saw a tiger, I'm not sure what to do, waiting instruction. And the colonel says, sounds like bullshit, but go out there, take like 10 guys, arm yourselves, and look for tracks. If there was a tiger walking around, like the sentry said, you should find some tracks. So I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. That's why this guy's a colonel. So we load up like 8-10 guys in 2 Jeeps, and we go out there. We relieve the sentry. He didn't see. He's like, man, it was quiet out here, nothing, had a good time. I'm like, oh, fine. I can tell half of these guys believe me and half don't, but everyone's freaked out. So I tell them the direction I heard the thing walking, and we fan out into the jungle. And there's nothing. There's not a trail. They're like, you say it was carrying a bloody monkey, right? I'm like, I know it sounds bizarre. Yes, it was carrying like a 100-pound bloody monkey in its mouth. They're looking for blood. We got guys there that grew up hunting deer in Alaska. They're like, we found a blood trail. And I'm like, I can't explain it, but maybe the blood has dried up. Maybe it was the same color as the leaves here. I don't know, but I know what I saw. So the main thing is we can't find any tracks. And, the 700 to 1,000-pound cat walking through the mud, and it was pretty wet ground, would leave some tracks. So the lieutenant says, let's fan out, stay like groups of 2 or stay within sight of someone else. We'll cover like a 100-yard path right up this hillside where he said the tiger went. And if there's tracks, one of us will spot him. So we all fan out, and we'd actually gone quite a ways in the jungle then. We fanned out, and it got messed up, but basically guys were covering a lot more ground. And the lieutenant says, you stay with me, coon dog. And I'm like, yes, sir. So he and I are walking up the hillside. We get separated a little bit, and I called out to him. His name was Sheehan. I said, Lieutenant Sheehan. And I didn't hear him answer. I'm like, oh, I'm just having these visions in my head of, a tiger coming out of the bushes, Lieutenant Sheehan in its mouth. And all of a sudden I kind of hear him at a different, he's like 45 degrees behind me. He's like, oh, here I am. I'm like, oh, wait. We turn around and look at each other. There's like these mangrove-like plants, like banyan trees around us, these giant roots. And between us there's this slick, muddy area with some very short grass. And at the exact same moment, both of us look down, and there's this line of giant tiger tracks leading right between us. I never felt so relieved in my life. And then, as icing on the cake, we bend down and we're looking at him, and there's a trail of blood drops. About every 6 inches, 3 inches, there's a drop of blood, verifying that it was carrying, a bleeding animal. So he's like, well, he goes, Lance Corporal, you were telling the truth all along. I said, yes, sir. And he goes, oh, I knew you were. And I'm like, now I'm going, oh, bullshit. But anyway, this is where it gets even stranger. So he gets on the radio, that guy said walkie-talkies, calls everyone in, tells them to rendezvous back at the Jeeps. We get down there, we drive back, I'm immediately telling guys, hey, we found tracks. They're like, oh, where were they? They go, they were up, those mangroves are out on the side of the hill before it got real steep. We go back to the base. He calls the colonel. The colonel comes out, shakes my hand, and says, let's go look at these tiger tracks. And they even have a Thai, I think he was an officer, like some Thai major or colonel there. We all go out there again with like one other Marine, who I can't remember. We get out and we look for like an hour for these tracks, and we could never find them again. Is that a trip or what? And ever since then, I've never been afraid of the dark. Isn't that a crazy story? Hard to believe, isn't it? It's because it was all bullshit. I made the whole thing up here. Well, everything was true up until me going in the Marines and going to Thailand. I did do that and participate in Cobra Gold, but the rest I made up. But I just thought it'd be fun for Halloween. Hope you enjoyed it. Well, after that wonderful ghost story, I just turned off the light for like 5 minutes and paddled and looked up at, there's millions of stars. It's so beautiful out here. There's really no light contamination here from the cities around. The closest town is Palm Bay, and it's a good 5 miles away to the edge. And it's just really beautiful out here. I'll tell you, it's super peaceful. The only sound I hear, there's no crickets, there's no birds. I haven't heard any bellowing gators. It's, you know, the fall, so they're not mating. The only sound I continuously hear is thousands of mosquitoes buzzing around my head net. The sun's just starting to come up, just barely starting to come up right now. Well, it has turned into one beautiful morning on Halloween, October 31st, 2019. It was a creepy night, but a fun night. I probably paddled for like 3.5 hours, but I've averaged maybe 2 miles an hour, maybe not even that. I'm going really slow. So I'm probably about 6 or 7 miles south of where I put in. I'm in a really remote area. I've been down here a couple times before in the last couple of years, but when I come into the Three Forks area of the Upper St. Johns River Marsh, I usually don't go this far down. But it is beautiful. I haven't seen many alligators. I just saw 2 that were swimming in front of the canoe. Sometimes they'll do that. They'll just stay like 30, 40 yards ahead of you. Like they're curious, like they want to keep an eye on you, but they don't want you getting too close to them. You keep advancing and they keep advancing. But isn't this a beautiful sunrise? Look at this over here. So it's about 7:15 in the morning on October 31st, 2019, Halloween morning. And I've come a long way down into the Three Forks section of the Upper St. Johns River Marsh. And I've started to see boats now. I've had like 4 go by me, 2 airboats and 2 bass boats. And I'll tell you, the problem is this canal's getting so thin up ahead of me that it becomes sort of hazardous for paddlecraft, you know, kayaks and canoes in here. You can hear the boats coming a long way away and you can pull over on the side like I just did, but this guy came by and at the last second, I mean, he's tearing down here at like 30 miles an hour. I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get capsized. I'm entrenched in these lily pads anyway, which really deaden the waves, but it's going to be rocky. But right here at the back of the canoe, he slows down, he just chops the motor, and he's like, oh man, I didn't see you. And I said, it's all right, I'll be all right. All right, then, you know, the waves hit, and I'm like, great. But sometimes you get in these long, thin stretches, and there's not time. There's not any little alcove like this to get over in. You can see I could have gone even further, but sometimes it's just solid bulrushes, and you're just screwed. You're stuck right there, and, you know, what I do then is I just paddle to the center of the canal. They have to see me. And if I'm really nervous, I have a hunting vest, an orange vest. I can put that on, but usually they see you. And there's moorhens everywhere out here. Brought my shotgun. I'll probably have to shoot some today. This is how easy it is to get them. There's one right there walking right up to me while I'm talking. I don't know if you can see him right there, but he's just walking, looking, cluck, 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 cluck. He's just walking right up to me. I could blow him to smithereens right now, but I haven't taken out the shotgun yet. Either way, beautiful Halloween morning. I'm happy to be out here. Oh, and one other thing, while I'm thinking about it, I'll tell you about this this place I'm at right now, this section of Three Forks. This is a giant flooded farm. This from the 1940s all the way up to about the year 2000, this was dry land. And that's why you see all these rows of trees. These were not growing up in the water like this. They'll eventually die. But this was all part of a farm. And what happened was the guy who owned the farm was a mass murderer. And they found like 40 bodies buried on his property. And they seized the farm, and they were trying to buy all these lands to reclaim them, flood them, and enhance the marsh, which they had ditched and drained back the early part of the 20th century. And so they seized the land for the state of Florida and flooded it. It's turned into a beautiful, like, 11,000 acre lake. They call it the Thomas O. Lawton Recreation Area, Thomas O. Lawton Lake. And that's true, except for the part about the guy being a mass murderer. That wasn't true, I made it up. Happy Halloween. That was a big snail kite. He had an apple snail in his mouth. I actually saw him swoop down and pick it up, but I didn't have the camera on then, so he landed on the side of this palm tree, and I said, well, turn the camera on, see how close I can get. That was pretty cool. Those are a cool bird. They just, the red-eyed devil of the swamp. Google them. They are a beautiful bird. They're a raptor with a hooked beak, and they have blood red eyes. So cool looking. Limpkin acting weird. They're a funny bird. Good eating though, I hear. Another thing about the limpkin, if you ever hear one of them calling at night, it'll send chills down your spine. They have the most blood-curdling, ghoulish scream. It sounds like a combination of someone being tortured and a cat being skinned. Beautiful, just beautiful. Pterodactyl. Oh, there's an alligator too, right off the bow. Just daring me to go over him. He doesn't know me very well, does he? Oh, there's a anhinga right there. I didn't even see it. Was blending in. Look at that, it just flew off. And then there's the alligator. I was focused on the alligator right there about 30 feet in front of me. About a 7-footer, maybe 8 foot. there, Petunia. You gonna climb in the canoe with me? Holy mackerel. There he goes. He was interested in me. Let's see if he came back up. I'm right over him. Interesting. I want to show you guys something. The Spanish conquistador that discovered Florida was named Juan Ponce de Leon, and on his second voyage here he was killed by a poison arrow shot by a Calusa Indian, and the poison was made from this plant right here, this beautiful purple flowered plant. They call that the purple death, and it's so deadly that if you even touch it, it can kill you. Just kidding. Happy Halloween. Juan Ponce de Leon did discover Florida, and he was killed by a poison arrow shot by a Calusa Indian, but that's just a pretty flower. We're racing. About a 9-footer. If you go canoeing in Florida on Halloween, you'll see real monsters. There is a giant, like 13-foot alligator straight off the bow at 60 yards. That's one of the biggest alligator heads I've seen this year. He just went under, and I'm going to try and get close to him. There's another big one here on the right coming out, but he's maybe 11 feet. But this thing up here is friggin' huge. He's easy 12 foot, maybe as long as 14. Hey, you don't need to be afraid. Come on over. About a 10-footer. About a 400-pound lizard. Trick or treat! It's Halloween, big pole. You're a big old like 13-footer, aren't you? Holy crap, look at that guy. Look at him right there. Look at that big ass alligator. You are a huge alligator. Hey there, buddy. You're the one I saw earlier that was trying to eat me. Okie dokie. It was nice making your acquaintance. I'm going to paddle on around. That's about a 12 to 13 footer right there. Alright, he wins the game of nerves. I'm getting out of here. An alligator that size can easily drag a full-grown cow into the water. Alligators are like ants. They're so much stronger than they look. Alright, you'll be on somebody's wall soon. You are a big alligator. They'll be looking for you, buddy. Jeez Louise, if I was an alligator hunter, I'd come in here and get that guy. Happy Halloween, Mr. Buzzard. The bird of death. How appropriate. Happy Halloween, snow egret. Oh, happy Halloween, Mr. Blue Heron. Great blue heron. You're the big, oh, you're a big boy, aren't you? Look at you. You know you want to fly away. You know you want to. There you go. Those birds are huge. Look at them. You look at those birds and you think they must be what, 20 pounds, 30 pounds? You know what they weigh? About 7 pounds. They're all feather. That's a big one, 7 pounds. That one probably weighed 7. Some of them are less. But they look like they're as heavy as a turkey, but they're not. Look at this, it's a haunted house. Actually, it's a storm shelter for boaters if you get caught out here in a thunderstorm. With a big vulture sitting on top. Perfect. Happy Halloween, vulture! You look scary. Sitting on your haunted house. Gotta go. I like your costume. Happy Halloween. Let me guess, an iguana. No, monitor lizard. Godzilla? I give up. These are pretty good waves. Holy mackerel, holy mackerel. All right, all right, all right. Oh, shit. Oh, man. That's about the closest I've ever come to being capsized, or maybe one other time. And the guy wasn't going ridiculously fast. He was a long way from me, but what happened, it was kind of a combination of the angle he cut at, the shoreline, and the direction I was coming. Man, that sucked. Hold on, there's another one coming behind him. I got to get out of this hot spot. One of these pieces of floating grass in front of me is actually about a 9-foot alligator. See if you can tell which one. Here's a hint. It's the one with 80 teeth. I'm going to shoot 3 or 4 more hens for my Halloween dinner tonight. So if you are offended or don't want to see game birds being harvested, this would be a good time to turn this video off. So there they are. There's two beautiful moorhens, and one or two more will definitely be enough for dinner. They're small birds. They're a little smaller than a Cornish game hen, but they're absolutely delicious. And you see how quick it is. I mean, sometimes I pull up to a pod of like 8 of them and shoot 5 or 6 before the others run away. And you really have to shoot them on the water. They don't fly. They can fly, but it's almost impossible to get them to flush. You hunt them like turkeys. You just shoot them on the ground. I thought I'd mention that this shotgun I use to hunt moorhens is a 12 gauge. It's a Winchester Model 25. It was made in 1953, and I bought it from a friend of mine who I went to high school with. I bought it from his father, actually, in 1983. And I was 17 years old. I'm 53 now, so I've had this shotgun a long time. It's a beautiful shotgun. It's really well made. And I know the shotguns today, you know, people love them, but I just think there's something about the old firearms that the wood stock, you know, and the heavy metal, they're just the bluing, just a beautiful shotgun. I paid $75 for it in 1983, and you know, it was a lot of money back then, but for a 17-year-old. But it's been a very, very good shotgun, and it's harvested many, many meals for me. So now I've got a long paddle back, but I thought I would give a plug to some YouTube creators who I really like. And if you like canoeing and hunting, these are videos you will probably like. More canoeing than hunting, but some incorporate hunting into them. The first is a guy who really got me hunting from a canoe. This guy gave me the idea, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to ever hunt from a canoe in Florida. But I hunted wild pigs and deer on foot with rifle and bow. And one day, about probably 3.5 years ago, I'm watching hunting videos, and I Googled pig hunting canoe kayak. Or maybe I just put pig hunting kayak because I initially thought I would buy a kayak. In fact, I own a kayak and have for 20 years, but it's an inflatable Cellulor dive yak. It's not something you would want to take. I've taken it out in the ocean like 3 miles offshore, but you wouldn't want to come in here with it. You sit too close to the water, and you could do it and probably get away with it, but you'd get splashed quite a bit if nothing else. But either way, so I Googled kayak hunting pig hunting kayak, something like that. And I get a number of videos popping up from this same guy on YouTube. And the channel is called Hunting with Stu. And it's an Australian fella who basically, back like 3 years ago, a lot of his videos were just him going out on his kayak. Now he's going out on these all-terrain vehicles and walking the outback and doing, he's added quite a bit to his channel. But back then it was just one kayaking video after another. And what he was doing was going out in, it was probably on some ranch somewhere, but to me it looked like, the middle of the outback. And he's paddling down these muddy little billabong rivers in a tiny little kayak and shooting wild pigs that come down to the river to wallow, basically, and to drink. And it just was, it was exciting because I like hunting wild pigs. And it was kind of a eureka moment. I said, my gosh, I'm going to get myself a kayak, and I'm going to start doing exactly what this guy Stu is doing in Australia. And then as I thought about it, I said, maybe I'd get a canoe instead. I canoed as a kid and stuff. I was a Boy Scout and everything. I mean, I had some experience in canoes, and I had quite a bit of experience on that inflatable kayak. But I knew the inflatable kayak wasn't going to work. And then as I started thinking, man, some of these pigs weigh like 400 pounds. And the kayak's capacity is like 275. So I get my fat ass in there with some water and a cooler and the shotgun, or the rifle, whatever. I'm not going to be able to get the pig out of the bush. So I opted for a canoe instead. And the payload of this is a Mohawk Blazer, 16 foot. I think the payload is close to 800 pounds. So like an airplane, if the maximum gross is 3,000 pounds, you can actually fly that thing with 5,000 pounds in it. So I'm sure this thing would float with more than 800 pounds in it, but you'd be pretty close to the water line with the gunnel. So anyway, I would highly recommend hunting with Stu. That guy, he just seems like a cool guy. But if you don't like watching animals get killed, then, you know, heads up, don't watch Hunting with Stu. But it's much more of a hunting channel than a kayaking channel. But I learned a lot from him. You know, I would watch every little thing, how he secured his rifle, how he paddled quietly, you know, how he would approach the pigs when they were lounging in the mud and on the riverbank. And it just, to me, it was high adventure. I've watched more of his videos than probably any other video creator on YouTube. So Stu Lawton, here's a guy in Central Florida who really thinks you're great. All right, the next guy, he's a foreigner too. The channel's named Kababoes. I think his name is Hans. And I should add right now, before I go any further, I don't know any of these people. I don't owe them anything. They don't owe me anything. I'm just doing this, you know, altruistically. I think people who enjoy this type of thing would benefit from knowing about these channels. And I always like when people give me some tip, and I found a lot of cool stuff from that. But anyway, so this next guy, Hans, I think is his name, his channel is Kababoes. And he's I think he's from the Netherlands, and Holland, the Netherlands, right? And if I'm wrong about that, I apologize. But I found his videos pretty early, and I really liked him. Now, he's an eccentric older guy like me, you know, and he goes out on these expeditions where he's paddling halfway across the damn continent of Europe and stuff, and camping, and you know, he would have been a great Floridian. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, actually. He would have done great up there because the people up there are just camping fanatics. But if you like that type of thing, I learned a lot about just minimalist camping from the guy. And if you like that type of thing, there's no hunting involved. He's over in Europe, but he goes to different countries. It's not just in the Netherlands. He's paddling all over the place in Europe. So if you like that type of thing, check out Kababoes. I think you'll like his videos. I really enjoy it. I'd like to meet the guy. I told him he could come out here. I told him and Stu both, if they ever got to Florida, to look me up, you know, and we'd do some expeditions in the swamps. Oh, I think I have a boat coming by me. Yes, I do. Let me get out of the way here, and then I will continue. All right, damn Ranger bass boat went by about 25 miles an hour, and it wasn't as bad as that guy a few hours ago, but he definitely splashed me, but that's all right. I could have pulled further over, and I didn't. So, this next guy, he's a foreigner too, come to think about it. He's a Canadian. And his channel name is GRS Riverrider. I don't know what his name is, but, and I should add also that I haven't, as I mentioned, you know, we have no quid pro quo, you know, with these people. I'm not mentioning this to get them to say anything about me. I'm a peon compared to most of these guys. They have a lot more experience, and they have a lot higher views on their channel. But though I have communicated with some of them via basically just the comment section on YouTube, I don't know any of them. I've never corresponded with any of them besides YouTube. I just like their videos. So this next guy is a Canadian, and I think he's in Saskatchewan. And the channel name is GRS Riverrider, and just the letters GRS Riverrider. And that guy's videos are really cool. They're artistic. He's quiet. He doesn't talk through the videos, but he plays some nice music that he obviously put some thought into, and he picks the right music for the right, you know, with a sunset or a mountainscape or whatever it is. You know, he's got good music for it. And I just find myself, when I know I found a channel I like, is when I sit there and watch someone for 45 minutes or an hour, and the video's done, and I'm like, man, I just sat there for an hour watching that guy paddle around some lake in Canada or whatever. And a lot of videos that I guess other people like, I'll click on them, and after 30 seconds, I'm like, it's not for me, and click off. But if you like canoeing, this guy is, you know, he knows his stuff. And I've learned a lot from him too, but to be honest, I watch his just for the beauty of the video. And Kababoes and Hunting with Stu and some of these others, I watch them for a more utilitarian reason. I'm picking up all these, you know, what stove they use, what rifle ammunition, etc. GRS Riverrider is just fun to watch, and good videos to watch when you're having your morning coffee. And also, obviously, anything by Joe Robinet or Doug Linker. These are two Canadians again. But keep in mind, Canadians are to canoeing what Saudi Arabians are to crude oil, or you know, Floridians are to tarpon fishing. I mean, they just, Canada damn near invented the canoe. They didn't, but you know what I mean. They were the early pioneers in the canoe, and frankly, the best canoes in the world are made in Canada. Now, I love Winona canoes. This Blazer Mohawk is one solid craft. You know, it's not rocket science building canoes, but boy, some of those canoe companies up in Canada are just, they are the Rolls Royce of canoes. Okay, you guys all owe me 50 bucks. Okay, it's Halloween night, 2019. I'm back home with my moorhens. I'm in my garage, and I'm going to show you guys a quick video on how to clean a moorhen. And I have to move pretty fast because it's going to be dark soon and all the goblins are going to be out. Okay, first thing you need is some moorhens. Then a cleaver, or I use a hatchet. You're going to need a chopping board that's hard that you can slam down onto. Just a regular sharp knife. Some paper towels. I'm just going to use my cooler today, but some receptacle with fresh water in it to wash the birds off, and then kind of a garbage bag to put the heads and feet and feathers and stuff, skin into. Okay, here we go. Start your stopwatch. First thing I do, cut off the head. Okay. Then I cut off the feet. Oh. There it goes. And you cut off the wings. Okay. Now you've just got the whole body of the moorhen. Find the breast area and insert your knife under the skin. If you cut the breast a little bit, it's no big deal, but try to cut as little of the meat as possible. Just make an indent, make a slit in there big enough for you to get your thumb into, and rip the skin away from the moorhen. This is the secret why this is so fast. And I'm not the first guy to come up with this, but you're not plucking the bird. You're not worrying about doing anything dainty or where you have to be careful. You're just ripping the skin right off the bird. Now these have been in ice for hours, and it's, with any game bird, it's easier to do this when they're closer to room temperature. These are pretty much ice cold, but you can still do it. You just have to pull harder. So just work your fingers around it. This one's giving me a little more difficulty than usual, but some of them the skin clings a little bit more, but with minimal effort, pull the skin right off. Now this back part, that's the butt, and even with like a chicken in the store, you usually see that cut off. So I just cut off the whole back side of the bird. Okay, now you've got the carcass of the bird. Come in here in that area you just made the cut with the butt. Oops, turn the knife around. Cut up. Reach two fingers, one finger if you've got really big fingers, into the breast cavity, and just yank everything out. The gizzard, the liver, the heart, the lung, everything comes out. Usually get it in one shot. And there it is. There's nothing left in there. And one thing I'll caution you here, moorhens' windpipes stick a little bit. They're kind of hard to get out. So you see right there, that's his windpipe. If you do cook it, it doesn't hurt anything. I've done it before, it's just gristle, but you know, if you can, go ahead and pull that windpipe out of there. Well, it'll come out here in a second. There it goes. That's the last of the windpipe. And if you have any fat, like on any game animal, I try and trim off the fat. It doesn't hurt it, it's just fat, so I get rid of it. And you're done, okay? That's it. I wash it off. And I have a nice chicken ready for the cast iron skillet. And usually I'll wash it one more time in the sink just to get off any little feather like that. But that's it. That's the common moorhen ready for market. Now, let me show you one last thing here quickly. If you like gizzards and livers, and I've said before, the gizzards and livers of a moorhen, or the foie gras of the wild game bird sweetmeats, they're really delicious. I love them, but if you don't like them, you can just throw this part out. This big hard thing, like a stone, is the gizzard, and it's got a lot of fat and stuff on it right now. Usually they don't have this much. It's a fatty bird, but that's a good thing, I guess. So you want to get that fat off. You don't want the fat on your meat when you cook it, but if it's there, it just turns into grease. It's no big deal. Okay, take your gizzard. This is a good way to cut your full hand off, so be careful doing this. I should really wear a glove, but I think I'll be all right if I'm careful. Just cut the gizzard in half, or close to in half. It doesn't have to be all the way. You want to be able to open it up. You see all that there? That's like a grit. That's like little rocks that the little stones the moorhen swallows to help it digest things. All birds do this. So I clean that out. It's the dirtiest part of the job. Then there's a little membrane here. It's a leathery, like plastic membrane. I just pull that out. You definitely want to remove this. I pull that membrane out, and there's your gizzard. Wash it off. And that's your gizzard, just like a chicken gizzard you would get in the store. Ready? Ready for the fryer. Then the liver, that's part of the liver. I kind of chopped it in half, I think. Sometimes I pulled it in half. They're kind of delicate. There's the bigger section of the liver. Pull the liver out, and if it has a little bit of there's like a gall duck on here. It's a bright green, which can give a chicken liver or a moorhen liver a bitter taste. Make sure you pull it off, but this one already came off. So there is my liver. There is my nice gizzard ready to go. And the last thing that some people like, I like them. They're very small on a moorhen, but the heart. So just trim off any ventricle, any arteries that are coming out of the heart. And you've got a nice heart ready to throw in with your gizzards and livers. That's it, guys. Everybody's heard of the headless horseman. This is the headless moorhen. Oh wait, here it is. Never mind. I'm okay. Sorry, it's Halloween. I had to do one more. I have a visitor. My neighbor's dog came over, smelled the moorhens, and wants to. Hi. Hi there, Fuzzy. Hi. Hi. How are you doing? You're a cutie, yes you are. You're a cutie, yes you are. That smells good, doesn't it? Oh boy. See you later.